The fire flickers gently tonight, casting a warm glow across the faces of those gathered close. The wood crackles softly, sending sparks of light into the deep, still African sky, measured and wise. And from somewhere in the shadows of memory, an old voice begins to rise. Not hurried, not loud, but patient. They breathed histories. They wove them into the air, one breath at a time. This is the voice of the Griot, across the vast savannas and ancient kingdoms, from the winding banks of the Niger to the heartlands of Mandinka country. Griots were not mere entertainers. In Senegal, they were Gwa, their melodies rising over ceremonies, council meetings, and battlefield farewells. In Gambia, the griots walked barefoot through centuries, their chorus strings speaking the names of warriors and kings, merchants and mothers. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. ... No, they were the living memory of nations, the echoes of ancestors, the keepers of stories older than empires themselves. They did not simply speak. Let's pause here for a moment. To be a griot was to carry 1,000 lives on your tongue, a lineage of voices, a burden wrapped in beauty. In Mali, they called them jelly. Born into the role, trained from childhood, entrusted with secrets no scroll could hold. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Griot stood where ink could not survive, where battles had erased cities, where drought had withered monuments. Let the words roll like waves against the shores of sleep. Still, they remembered. May you dream of songs carried by wind, of names wrapped in gold, and of ancestors dancing between stars. And tonight, you too will walk their journey. But slowly, calmly, like footsteps pressed into soft earth. Like lullabies carried on the breeze, let us drift into their world. A world where memory is sacred, where music is archive, and where storytelling was a weapon. A bomb, a ceremony, each line on their palm tells a story. Each scar a testament to the sacrifices made in service of memory. The spirits of griots past, hovering just beyond the firelight, lending their voices to the chorus of history. The griots' eyes, though age, sparkle with the light of 1,000 tales waiting to be told. It is an invitation to become part of something greater, to touch the very pulse of West African culture and feel its rhythms course through our veins. The griot clears their throat, a small gesture that carries the weight of centuries. It speaks of a time when words were more than just sounds, when stories were the very fabric of society. Let's pause here for a moment, for, in the words of the griot, we find not just entertainment, but the very essence of who we are and where we come from. First, we will journey into the daily hardships griots quietly endured, the silence between performances, the hunger of exile, the loneliness of carrying too many voices. Over the next 2 hours, we will explore this path in 4 parts. Then we'll meet one legendary griot and slowly unfold their life, not with rush or drama, but with gentle reverence. Next, we'll descend into the mysticism and ritual behind griot craft. The sacred instruments, the taboos, the spiritual oaths, all kept hidden from the uninitiated. And lastly, we will lift the veil on the royal courts and aristocratic circles where griots once whispered into the ears of kings, shaping decisions and dynasties alike. You need not stay awake for it all. Let the rhythms rock you gently. And if you do drift off, let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The griot's voice rises once more, a gentle whisper that carries the weight of centuries. In the flickering firelight, we see the griot's weathered hands, calloused from years of plucking chorus strings. The air grows thick with the scent of burning herbs, a a sacred smoke that cleanses the space and opens the pathways to ancestral wisdom. As we settle in for this journey, we feel the presence of those who came before us. This is not just a story, so lean in close, dear listener. Open your hearts and minds to the wisdom that has been passed down through generations. The night deepens, and the stars above seem to lean in closer, eager to hear the tales that will unfold. And so, with reverence and wonder, we begin our journey into the world of the Griot, guardians of memory, weavers of identity, and keepers of the sacred flame of African oral tradition. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The quiet weight of memory. The life of a griot did not glitter like the gold of kings. It did not echo with applause. More often, it was marked by hunger, silence, and the long, lonely task of remembering. Before the stage, before the palace, before the praise, there was struggle. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Let's pause here for a moment. The dust clings to their skin. Their hands are cracked from travel, their stomach often empty. The weight of centuries rests upon their shoulders, a burden invisible to the untrained eye. In the early mornings, before the village stirs, a griot sits beneath a neem tree. They are the keepers of secrets, the guardians of truths too heavy for ordinary minds to bear. They do not eat until they are called. They do not speak unless summoned. Their existence is one of patient waiting, of careful observation, carriers of dynasties, of tragedies, of treaties made and broken. Their bodies, already lean from constant travel, grew gaunt with hunger. They bore witness to the downfall of great leaders, their songs shifting from praise to lament. In their voices, the echoes of once mighty empires lived on, yet still, they persevered, for the stories they carried were more precious than food. Each story they told was a thread in the vast tapestry of their people's history, woven with care and precision. The soles of their feet grew calloused, their legs strong from endless journeys. Each step was a beat in the rhythm of history, carrying them forward through time. The villagers whisper about them, their voices a mix of awe and trepidation. They became the last refuge for lineages wiped from the earth, their memories the only remaining testament to lives lived and lost. It was a life of service, of sacrifice, of unwavering dedication to the preservation of knowledge. In their hands, history lived and breathed, passed down from generation to generation. Smoke rises from cooking fires, and the first stirrings of daily life can be heard. The griot pauses at the outskirts, waiting for the invitation they know will come. Some bow their heads in respect, while others hurry to clear a path. Children peek from behind their mothers' skirts, curiosity warring with the warnings they've been given. Each word is carefully stored away, another thread to be woven into the grand tapestry of their knowledge. Fingers, calloused from years of playing, pluck at the strings. They speak of great kings and humble farmers, of battles won and lost, of droughts endured and bountiful harvests celebrated. Children sit wide-eyed, drinking in tales of heroes long past. Elders nod, recognizing the wisdom passed down through generations. The first notes hang in the air, sweet and clear, drawing the villagers closer. The villagers sit in quiet contemplation, their minds filled with visions of the past and dreams of the future. The griot bows their head, honoring the weight of the moment. A small leather bag containing the few possessions they own hangs at their side. They speak of neighboring kingdoms, of trade routes that stretch across the continent, of customs and traditions that bind communities together. The village elders pressed gifts into their hands, a new gourd for water, a handful of cola nuts for the journey ahead. As they walk away, their figures silhouetted against the setting sun. A young child tugs at their mother's sleeve, They carry with them the weight of memory, the echoes of countless lives lived and lost. In their voice, in their songs, in the gentle strumming of their kora, the history of a people lives on. Will they come back? The child asks, voice filled with wonder, with heartfelt thanks. The Griot accepts these offerings, knowing they will sustain them on the long road ahead. In their words, the vast tapestry of West African history comes alive. With a deep breath, they set out, their bare feet leaving imprints in the dusty earth. The Griot smiles, their eyes kind despite the weariness etched into their features. With a gentle nod, they follow the child into the heart of the community. With a gesture, they are invited to sit, to share in the morning meal. For as long as there are stories to be told, the Griot will return. It is a simple fare, millet porridge and dried fruit. But to the hungry Griot, it is a feast fit for kings. They drank from shallow streams, the water a blessing on parched throats. Sahelian plains stretched endlessly before them, the horizon shimmering with heat. Ancient city gates loomed, their crumbling stones a testament to the passage of time. To allow a single story to slip away was to fail in their most sacred duty. Each memory preserved was a victory against the relentless march of time. Abandoned villages, overtaken by brush, stood as silent reminders of the impermanence of human endeavors, and always they whispered forgotten names to the wind, ensuring that even the most insignificant life was remembered. They were born into it. The children of Griots before them. Lineage bound them tighter than rope. Even when they suffered, they could not simply walk away. The call of their ancestors echoed in their blood, a constant reminder of their sacred duty. Their determination was fueled by a purpose greater than themselves, a calling that transcended the hardships of their daily existence. The Griot's eyes, deep and knowing, scan the horizon for signs of those who might need their wisdom. For all their wisdom, they are seen as both sacred and strange. Some fear them, others revere them, but few truly know them. The Griot's life is one of solitude. Even when surrounded by others, in many traditions, Griots were not free to choose another life. Their minds were vast libraries, cataloguing the triumphs and sorrows of generations. In the quiet hours of the night, they would recite these memories to themselves, ensuring not a single detail was lost to time. Their words were not their own, they were vessels. Every death, every war, every harvest lost, the Griot had to remember. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. When famine struck, Griots felt it most. When kings fell, Griots carried the shame. When a noble family was erased, the Griot bore the ghosts. And through it all, they kept walking, from village to village, kingdom to kingdom. Their voice, the only remaining evidence of what once was. They slept beneath baobabs, their gnarled branches a canopy of protection. The landscapes they traversed were as varied as the stories they told, yet still they endured. The Griot's spirit was as resilient as the baobab, weathering storms and droughts alike, because to forget was to let the ancestors vanish, and for a Griot, that was the deepest sin. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The Griot's life was not one of glory or riches. As dawn breaks over the savannah, the Griot rises, ready to face another day. Their kora, worn but well-loved, is slung across their back. The village they approach is like countless others they have visited. A child, sent by the village elders, approaches cautiously. As they walk, whispers follow them. The Griot has come. The villagers murmur, a mix of excitement and apprehension in their voices. In the central square, the elders await. The Griot bows deeply, showing deference to the wisdom of age. As they eat, the Griot listens. They hear the concerns of the village, the joys and sorrows that have marked the passing of seasons. When the meal is finished, the Griot reaches for their kora, and then the Griot begins to speak. Their voice, rich with the weight of centuries, fills the square. The villagers listen, spellbound. In the Griot's words, they hear echoes of their own stories, their own struggles and triumphs. As the sun climbs higher in the sky, the Griot's voice never falters. When at last they fall silent, the square is hushed. As evening approaches, the Griot prepares to leave. With a final bow, the Griot turns to leave. The mother smiles, her eyes following the retreating form of the Griot. They always do, she says softly. And so, the Griot walks on their footsteps, leaving a trail in the dust. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Rejection, exile, and wandering, not every village welcomed the Griot. Not every ear was ready to hear. Sometimes the most powerful voices were met with closed gates and colder eyes, and Griots carried too much of it. You see, knowledge ... is dangerous. They would speak the shame of a cowardly chief. They would recite the sins of a nobleman's grandfather. They would remember what others wanted forgotten. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. There were times when griots told truths people did not want to hear, and so they were exiled. They wandered from court to court, festival to festival, unsure of which fire might warm them next. Not punished, not imprisoned, just ... sent away. With no food, no coin, no farewell, only the road ahead. The world of the Griot was not a home, but a horizon. Some griots became nobody, their names lost to wind, their voices swallowed by silence. To silence a griot was to erase generations. But still ... it happened. Others lived on only in whispers, remembered not for their songs, but for the fear they left behind. Some took their memories with them into the wild, speaking only to trees, to rivers, to shadows. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. In Wolof tradition, it was said that a Gwa who angered a king might be cast into permanent silence, never to speak a name again. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Back to villagers that once welcomed them with open arms. Back to faces now turned away in fear or shame. Back to melodies that once danced on eager ears. It was a road paved with loneliness and uncertainty. Each step a testament to their resilience. Each breath a whisper of stories untold. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Remember the power of their words. Remember the importance of their role. Remember that they were the keepers of history, the guardians of truth. Some griots learned to disguise their truths in riddles. Some stopped singing altogether. Their gift became their burden when the stories they carried seemed too heavy for one soul to bear. When the longing for a place to call home threatened to silence their song. Let's pause here for a moment. And yet, despite the rejection, the silence, the long miles beneath their feet, they kept walking. They kept carrying names. They kept remembering. Because even in exile, truth has feet, and memory cannot be chained. The path of the griot was not an easy one. Among ancient trees that had seen centuries pass, they would share their tale. To babbling brooks and rustling leaves, they would sing their songs. Nature became their audience, their confidant, their home. Worthy of the knowledge they carried worthy of the trust placed in them by generations past, worthy of the title Griot. For every cold eye, there was a curious mind, eager to learn. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Another day of wandering ahead, another chance to share their gift, another opportunity to keep the flame of memory burning bright. Always moving, always seeking, never truly belonging, yet belonging to all. For every rejection, there was a chance for redemption. The freedom to be the voice of those long silenced. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The stories would live on. The names would endure. The truth would prevail. Let's pause here for a moment. In the quiet of the night, when all others slept, the Griot's mind would wander. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. They walked on, for they were the keepers of stories, the guardians of memory, the wonders of wisdom, a calling to weave the tapestry of human experience with their words. But forward they must go, for the Griot's journey is never truly done. Was far from over. There were times when the weight of their knowledge felt unbearable. Let's pause here for a moment. Strength to face another day of uncertainty, but in those moments of despair, they would remember. And so they would rise, dust off their weary feet, and continue on their endless journey. For every closed gate, there was an open heart waiting. Let's pause here for a moment. The Griot's life was one of constant motion. They were the wanderers of wisdom, the nomads of knowledge, the pilgrims of prose. Their words were their compass, their stories, their map, and the truth. ... Their North Star. Let's pause here for a moment. In the depths of forests, where shadows danced with moonlight, the Griot would find solace. And in those quiet moments, surrounded by the whispers of the wild, they would find strength. Strength to carry on, strength to keep the stories alive. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. For the Griot knew that their exile was not just a punishment. It was a test of their resolve, a test of their dedication to their craft. And with each step, with each word spoken to the wind, they proved themselves worthy. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. As dawn broke over distant horizons, the Griot would rise. For, in their exile, they had found purpose. In their rejection, they had found strength. In their wandering, they had found freedom. The freedom to speak truth to power. The freedom to preserve what others would forget. Let's pause here for a moment. And so, the Griot's journey continued. Across sun-baked plains and through misty valleys, over rushing rivers and around towering mountains, always moving, always remembering, always speaking. For they knew that as long as they walked, as long as they spoke, as long as they remembered. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. In the end, the Griot's exile was not a curse, but a calling to wander, a calling to witness. And though their path was often lonely, though their burden was often heavy, and their journey, the hunger between performances. Not all the hunger a Griot knew lived in the belly. Some hungers were deeper, a hunger to be heard, a hunger for dignity, a hunger to rest, if only for a while. But first, there was always the hunger of the body. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Their livelihood came from performance. And if no one was listening, there was no bread, no meat, no calabash of milk. Food was not a guarantee. A griot did not farm. A griot did not trade. The days stretched long and silent. Villages too busy with harvest. Courts too distracted with politics. Rain too heavy for celebration. And so the Griot would wait. They bore the quiet like a second skin, a cloak of patience wrapped around weary shoulders. The days between songs were long, their voices rested, but their bones did not. It reminded the Griot why memory mattered, why a story, when told with heart, could feed more than just the soul. In return for a memory, and sometimes even that was withheld, the fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. There were no encores in this life, no applause, only a quiet exchange, a bowl of stew, ... Let's pause here for a moment. Yet hunger sharpened the voice, it gave weight to the words. In the quiet moments between performances, the Griot listens. The Griot gathers each moment, each fleeting impression, storing them away for future fingers dance across strings, coaxing melodies from wood and gourd. Words are shaped and reshaped, polished like river stones, until they gleam with truth, to the wind whispering through acacia trees, to the laughter of children playing in dusty courtyards. It is the ache to preserve, to remember, to pass on the wisdom of generations. Every step is measured, every breath a reminder of the stories waiting to be told. Not yet. Not until the words have been shared, the songs have been sung, to the memories that live in the very air they breathe. The triumphs and sorrows, the legends and cautionary tales, each performance is a thread woven into the great tapestry of memory. A naming ceremony is to be held, a new life welcomed into the community. The Griot's presence is requested, their voice needed to bless the child with ancient words of protection and hope. The Griot takes a deep breath, feeling the weight of generations settle upon their shoulders. A Griot sings. So they rose again, tuned their instruments, warmed their voices. The strings of the kora hummed softly, like distant bees in a field of golden grass. The Griot and the listeners are one, bound together by the power of shared memory. Then, slowly, bowls are passed. The Griot accepts with grace, savoring each morsel as if it were the finest delicacy. The Griot offers them a smile, a gentle word. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars, for they, too, are part of the story, the next chapter waiting to unfold. There are always more stories to remember, more songs to practice. The hunger may be sated for now, but it will return. It always does. And when the next feast came, or the next birth, or the next funeral, they stepped forward once more, hungry but ready. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Because, even in hunger, a living testament to the power of words, of memory, of shared experience, the rhythm of life pulses slow and steady, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. These are the times when stories simmer, flavors deepening like a well-tended stew, a reminder that even in our hungriest moments, we are never truly alone. The Griot steps quicken, energy renewed by the promise of performance. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Through feast and famine, through joy and sorrow, the stories will endure. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. In the hush of dawn, before the world fully wakes, the Griot practices. The kora sings, its notes dancing on the night air. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Let the rhythm of these words carry you to peaceful slumber. For in your dreams, perhaps you too will hear the Griot's song, echoing across time and space. The story unfolds of brave ancestors and hard-won wisdom, of the child's place in the great cycle of life. The hunger gnaws, a constant companion, but it is more than just an empty belly, for in the Griot's voice lives the history of a people. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The sun climbs higher, heat shimmering across the land. The Griot moves slowly, conserving energy in the marketplace. Life bustles and swirls. The aroma of roasting meat teases, a temptation the Griot must resist. Children pause in their play, eyes wide with curiosity. Let's pause here for a moment. As evening approaches, a whisper of excitement ripples through the village. The hunger recedes, pushed aside by purpose, gathered around the fire, faces flickering in the warm light. The village waits, and then ... they begin. Words flow like honey, sweet and rich with meaning. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the star. Eyes shine with unshed tears. Hearts swell with pride and belonging. For a moment, hunger is forgotten. As the last notes fade, a reverent silence falls. For this is the exchange. Story for sustenance, memory for meal, a sacred contract, as old as time itself. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The night deepens, the fire burns low. One by one, the villagers drift away to their homes, carrying the echoes of the Griot's words in their hearts. But for the Griot, the work is not done. And so, as the world sleeps, the Griot keeps vigil, guardian of memory, keeper of tradition, voice of a people. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new hungers, but also new stories, new songs, new reasons to persevere. For as long as there are those who listen, the Griot will sing. And in the quiet moments between performances, when the hunger gnaws and doubt whispers ... the Griot remembers. They are more than just a voice, they are a bridge between past and future. Let's pause here for a moment. So rest now, dear listener. And when you wake, may you carry with you a fragment of that ancient wisdom, for the stories live on. In every heartbeat, in every breath, in the very marrow of our bones. Let's pause here for a moment. Sleep now, and dream of Griot singing beneath starlit skies. Their voices a balm for the soul's deepest hungers. One day, an old blind Griot named Macon looked at Sadio and said, "You are not just remembering, you are listening to the ancestors directly." That night, Sadio dreamed of a white lion resting beside a drum. He awoke, and for the first time, he wept. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The next morning, Macon gave him a calabash of water and said, "You are ready to carry voices that are no longer here." He raised it to his lips, tasting not just water, but the essence of stories untold. Sadio's hands trembled as he took the cup. Its weight felt like the burden of centuries. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. And so began the journey of Sadio. Not famous yet, not celebrated, but already heavy with the burden of memory. The land whispered to him tales of battles won and lost, of love that transcended death, of wisdom passed down through generations. His footsteps would lead us deeper now, through glory, grief, and echoes of kings. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The wind carried fragments of ancient melodies, and Sadio wove them into songs that made even the trees sway in recognition. Sadio walked the paths of his ancestors, each step a rhythm, each breath a verse. He learned to listen not just with his ears, but with his very soul, and there, hidden beneath layers of time, he found it, a melody as old as the earth itself. Let's pause here for a moment. Her eyes were clouded with age, but her memory was sharp as a hunter's spear. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Chiefs and kings sent for him, eager to hear the stories of their ancestors from lips that seemed to speak with the very voice of history, for he carried not just glory, but also the pain, the losses, the betrayals that time had tried to forget, of a time when the empire was but a dream in the heart of a crippled prince. In the village of Sibi, where the rocks still bear the handprint of Sunyata, Sadio met an old woman. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. "Child," she said, her voice like dry leaves in the wind. "Do you know the song of the first rain?" Sadio closed his eyes, reaching deep into the well of memory. He sang of fish that swam in the stars, of boats that sailed on moonbeams. He wove tales of silent heroes whose actions spoke louder than any words. As he sang, the sky darkened, thunder rolled across the plains, and for the first time in 7 years, rain fell on Sibi. The boy's mouth is open in song, and nearby, fish leap from the water as if dancing. His steps grew slower, but his voice remained strong, carried on the winds of memory. Let's pause here for a moment. He closed his eyes and listened. To the whispers of ancestors, to the songs of unborn generations. The old baobab tree still stood, its branches reaching towards the sky like gnarled fingers of history. Word of Sadio's gift spread like wildfire across the savannah, but with each tale he told, each song he sang, Sadio felt the weight of memory grow heavier. His face is illuminated by firelight as he sings with eyes closed. He sang of love that moved mountains and grief that carved rivers. He opened his eyes and looked at the faces around him, young and old, each carrying a piece of the story he had just told. He sang of the great wheel of time, ever turning. The boy's eyes were full of stories he couldn't tell, of a world he experienced but couldn't share. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. In the court of Mansa Musa, resplendent with gold, Sadio sang of humble beginnings. In the background, a faint, ghostly image of Sadio smiles approvingly. We are the sum of all who came before us, and the promise of all who will come after. It is up to us to listen, to remember, and to pass on the stories that shape us. The silhouette of a storyteller gestures to the heavens, where constellations form shapes of ancient heroes and forgotten tales. The people of Kongabar gathered around him, listening in awe as the history of their people poured forth in an unbroken stream. The Mansa wept, his golden crown suddenly feeling like a burden. Let's pause here for a moment. Yet for all the courts he graced, all the powerful men who hung on his every word, Sadio found the truest magic in the simplest moments. In a small fishing village by the Niger, he met a child who couldn't speak. For in the hearts and minds of those who had listened, new seeds of memory had been planted in the rustle of leaves, in the flow of the Niger, in the laughter of children. The memories live on. Sadio sat with him by the river for 7 days and 7 nights. On the 8th morning, the boy opened his mouth, and out came a song so beautiful. It made the river pause in its course. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. As the years passed, Sadio's hair turned grey, then white. He returned to Kangaba, to the very spot where he had been born. Sadio sat beneath it, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath him, and he began to sing. He sang of beginnings and endings, of triumphs and failures. For 3 days and 3 nights, Sadio sang. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. As the first light of the 4th dawn touched the horizon, Sadio's voice finally fell silent. With a smile, he said, "Now you remember to..." And with those words, Sadio, the rememberer, closed his eyes for the last time. But the story didn't end there. They say that if you walk the lands of the old empire and listen closely, you can still hear echoes of Sadio's songs. Let's pause here for a moment. And so, dear listeners, as our tale comes to a close, remember this: we are all born with the drumbeat of history in our hearts. For in the end, we are not just ourselves. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The years of glory and burden, they began to call him Sadio, the golden voice, not because his words were sweet, but because they weighed something, like gold, heavy, bright, and dangerous to carry. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. He sang when to warring chiefdoms laid down spears, because his voice reminded them of the blood they shed. He sang at the coronation of King He sang at the funeral of General Crowds grew, coins flow. Even the wind seemed to hush when Sadio began to speak. But fame, like fire, gives warmth and burns both. He could not eat in peace. He could not grieve aloud. Every step became a performance. Once, he cried after reciting the tale of the matriarch, an old woman who sacrificed herself to save a village. His voice cracked, the fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. When the crowd clapped, he realized they had missed the sorrow. They had come for entertainment. And in that moment, let's pause here for a moment. He began to walk alone again, from one royal court to another. From one marriage feast to another funeral pyre, the boy's fingers still bore the calluses of a novice kora player, his voice not yet tempered by years of recitation. He felt a pang of something between envy and sorrow. After a long moment, he answered. He looked at Sadio with a mixture of awe and trepidation, as if addressing a living legend. The young griot's brow furrowed, not fully grasping the depth of Sadio's response. But in time, he too would understand the burden of being a vessel for the memories of others. The finest silks could not cushion the restlessness in his soul. In the quiet moments between performances, Sadio yearned for the peace of anonymity, for the luxury of a life unobserved. But such wishes were as futile as trying to catch the wind in his hands. Each night, as he lay awake, the whispers of countless tales danced in his mind, a relentless parade of lives lived and lost. The weight of his words grew heavier with each step, each performance, each tale, each song, each recitation added another link to the chain that bound him to his duty. The face that stared back at him was both familiar and strange. Lines etched by years of laughter and sorrow. Eyes that held the wisdom of ages, he wondered, not for the first time, what stories his own face might tell if given the chance. Kings and commoners alike sought his presence, hungering for the power of his words. He sang of great battles and tender loves, of betrayals and reconciliations, of the cycle of life that bound all people together. The crowd swayed, eyes closed, lost in the power of his performance. They leaned forward, eager to be transported by his words, to lose themselves in the tapestry of history and myth he would weave. Sadio took a deep breath, feeling the weight of expectation pressing down upon him. Children tugged at his robes, begging for stories of great heroes and fearsome beasts. For the first time in years, he felt truly seen, not as the golden voice, but as a man with his own story to tell. He had broken the chains of expectation and found his own voice within the chorus of history. The burden he carried was still heavy, but now it was balanced by the weight of his own truth. His voice, that instrument of gold that had never failed him, suddenly Sadio, the golden voice, discovered that his greatest story, the one that would echo through time long after he was gone, was the story of finding himself amidst the tapestry of 1,000 other lives. In that suspended moment, he was no longer the vessel of history, but simply a man. Fallible, human, real. The note hung in the air, unfinished, like a question without an answer. He still sang the old tales, still carried the weight of collective memory. But now, woven through the familiar stories, were threads of his own experience. He became not just a keeper of history, but a bridge between past and present, between the epic and the personal. But this time, the story was different. This time, he sang of a griot named Sadio, of the joys and burdens of a life lived in service to memory. He sang of the loneliness of fame, of the weight of other people's stories, of the yearning for a tale to call his own. These were the times when he felt most himself. Not the golden voice, not the great griot, but simply Sadio, a man with his own joys and sorrows. Elders nodded in reverence as he passed, acknowledging the living repository of their collective memory. Yet amidst the adoration, Sadio felt a profound loneliness. They believed his voice could heal rifts, inspire courage, and even command the very fabric of reality. Instead, they found themselves witness to something raw, immediate, and profoundly human. As Sadio's song drew to a close, there was a moment of stunned silence. Then, slowly, a wave of understanding rippled through the gathering. But with each grand tale he wove, a piece of Sadio himself seemed to unravel. He was the keeper of history, the voice of the voiceless. But at what cost to his own story? The irony tasted bitter on his tongue, like unripe fruit plucked too soon. In the eyes of the people, he was not Sadio. He was the vessel of their stories, their triumphs, their sorrows, a living archive wrapped in indigo robes. Sadio's golden voice echoed through grand halls and humble villagers alike, but the echo of his own heart grew fainter. He remembered thousands of names, but no one remembered his. He slept beneath fine canopies, but never called any place home. One night, a young griot approached him, eyes wide with admiration and curiosity. "Master Sadio," the young griot asked, his voice barely above a whisper, "do you ever forget a story?" Sadio gazed at the boy, seeing a reflection of his younger self. Eager, untouched by the weight of generations. "No, but I forget what it feels like to live one." The words hung in the air, heavy as the gold that adorned the courts where he performed. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The weight of memory is heavier when it is not your own, and Sadio, for all his glory, carried centuries on his back. Glory gave him gold, but it also took his silence. And sometimes, silence is the griot's only sanctuary. As the years passed, Sadio's reputation grew to mythic proportions. He walked through marketplaces, feeling the weight of 1,000 eyes upon him. In quiet moments, he would run his fingers over the strings of his kora, coaxing out melodies that spoke of things beyond words. But such moments were fleeting. The world always called, hungry for his gifts, and Sadio, bound by duty and tradition, could not refuse. One sweltering afternoon, as he prepared to perform at a chieftain's wedding, Sadio caught sight of his reflection in a polished bronze mirror. As he stepped onto the dais, Kora cradled in his arms, a hush fell over the gathered crowd, and then he began to sing. His voice rose and fell like the tides, carrying the listeners on a journey through time and space. But as Sadio reached the climax of his tale, the moment when the hero must make a great sacrifice, something unexpected happened. The audience held its breath, waiting. Sadio felt a moment of panic, then a strange sense of relief, and then, softly at first, then with growing strength, he began to sing again. The crowd listened, spellbound. They had come expecting grand epics and ancient legends. Tears flowed freely, not just from the audience, but from Sadio himself. As the applause washed over him, Sadio realized that he had found a new kind of freedom. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. From that day forward, Sadio's performances took on a new dimension, and in doing so, the fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars, knowing that every voice, no matter how golden, carries within it the power to reshape the world and itself. The final song, Sadio grew older. His braids grayed, his voice deepened like a drum buried in the earth. He no longer ran to festivals. He no longer answered every call. He chose his performances like prayers, sparse, sacred, and slow. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. He returned one day to the banks of the Jaliba River. The village was smaller. The baobab he once sat beneath, now split down the middle by lightning. Children no longer recognized him. The elders who once tested him, long buried. Still, he unpacked his kora. Still, he sat beneath that broken tree. Still, he sang. But not the old songs. This time, he told no history, no battles, no dynasties, no names. This time, he told his own story of carrying memories that were never his to begin with. He sang of a lion in a dream, of tears that no one noticed, of songs that went unfinished. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. He sang of walking in exile, of being praised and forgotten. The villagers listened. Some wept, some did not understand, but for once, Sadio did not care. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. This song was not for them. It was for the river, for the wind, for the griots unborn. Let's pause here for a moment. Others say he still walks the earth, listening, always listening. They say the next morning, Sadio was gone. Now he was the eye of the storm, calm, centered. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. His performances were no longer spectacles, but intimate communions with the spirits of the land. Sadio's steps were measured, each one a beat in the rhythm of his final journey. The instrument on his back, wrapped in cloth, worn smooth by decades of travel, seemed to whisper with each step, eager for its last performance. No grave, no farewell, only a kora resting where the baobab had fallen, its strings silent but still warm from the night's final song. Some believe the ancestors took him. Some believe he turned into wind. Houses that once bustled with life now stood empty, their mud brick walls crumbling back into the earth. He recalled the pride in his teacher's eyes when he'd mastered a particularly difficult passage, and the crushing disappointment when he'd fumbled an important performance before the chief, of nights spent beneath unfamiliar stars, homesick for a place he could never quite name. He sang of the faces that had blurred together over the years, those who had sought his wisdom, his blessing, his songs. How many of them truly saw him? How many knew the man behind the mantle of This was not the recitation of lineages stretching back to the dawn of time. This was something new, something raw and personal. A great lion, mane aflame, that spoke with the voices of all those who had come before. The weight of unspoken words, of melodies that danced just beyond his grasp. Tears that fell in the dark, when no one was there to witness the humanity of the storyteller. The elders who had challenged him, who had pushed him to greatness, their voices now silenced by time. The last note hung in the air, shimmering like mist over the river. And then silence, where moments before there had been a man, bent with age, but radiating an inner fire. Now there was only empty space. Being, the song poured from him like water from a spring, unstoppable and pure. But of the Griot himself, there was no trace. Others claimed that he had been swept up in a whirlwind, carried off to the realm of the ancestors. The more practical-minded suggested he had simply slipped away in the pre-dawn light, off to find a quiet place for his final rest. In the lapping of water against the riverbank, in the stories passed down from parent to child. For the wind that had carried his voice across vast distances, they echo in the hearts of those who listen, shaping the future even as they preserve the past. For the yet unborn griots, who would one day take up the mantle he was laying down, a melody carried on the wind, a story still unfolding. Are we not all, in our own way, griots, keeping alive the memories of those who came before, while adding our own verses to the great song of existence? The echo of a griot who found, in his final moments, the purest expression of his art. But sometimes, in the quiet moments between performances, they would remember Sadio. They would think of his courage in laying bare his soul, in singing not for glory or tradition, but for the simple truth of his own experience. It was a gift, but not one meant for human ears alone. He settled himself against the splintered remains of the baobab, feeling the rough bark against his back. A deep breath, and then ... music. Sadio paid them no mind. His eyes were closed, lost in the landscape of his own heart. Yet the river flowed on, unchanging. It remembered. A reminder that even the keepers of history have stories of their own. That behind every grand tale, every epic recitation, there beats the heart of a person. Complex, flawed, and beautifully human. The mighty baobab, once the heart of community gatherings, lay broken. Its fallen trunk, a bridge between past and present. A child tugged at his mother's skirts, asking in a whisper who the strange man was and why his song made the air feel heavy. But Sadio sang on, oblivious to their reactions, each line a testament to the tales he'd carried, the songs he'd sung. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. His once nimble fingers now moved with a deliberate grace, as if each note was a precious gem to be savored, because a griot never truly disappears. He sang of long nights spent perfecting his craft, of the weight of responsibility that came with being the keeper of a people's history. His voice, rich and deep as the river itself, carried tales of triumphs and heartbreaks that were uniquely his own. They become echoes. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The years had etched their stories into Sadio's face. In his youth, he had been a whirlwind, a force of nature that swept through villages. His voice, a clarion call that drew people from miles around. Let's pause here for a moment. The path to the Joliba River stretched before him, a ribbon of moonlit sand. The village that greeted him was a shadow of its former self. Young faces stared at Sadio with curiosity, but no recognition sparked in their eyes. With reverence, Sadio unwrapped his kora. Its gored body gleamed in the fading light, strings humming with anticipation. But this was not the music of kings and heroes. Let's pause here for a moment. Sadio's weathered hands moved across the strings, coaxing out melodies that spoke of a life lived in service to story. He sang of the first time he'd held a kora, how its strings had seemed to vibrate with the very essence of creation. The song wove through memories of dusty roads and strange lands. Sadio's voice cracked as he recounted dreams that had haunted him. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. As night deepened, a small crowd gathered. Some were drawn by curiosity, others by the haunting beauty of the unfamiliar melody. An old woman wept silently, though she could not have said why. For the first time in his long career, he was not performing. He was not teaching. He was simply ... This song was for the earth that had supported his travels. Let's pause here for a moment. As the first hints of dawn began to color the eastern sky, Sadio's song finally came to an end. The villagers who had kept vigil through the night found themselves blinking in confusion. Sadio's kora lay nestled in the roots of the fallen bale. Its strings still vibrated faintly, as if echoing with the power of that final performance. In the days and weeks that followed, stories began to circulate. Some swore they had seen Sadio walk into the river, dissolving like morning fog. But all agreed on one thing: Sadio was gone. Yet his presence lingered, in the whisper of wind through grass, because a true griot never truly dies. Their words, their wisdom, their melodies, these things become part of the very fabric of the world. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. And so, Sadio's final song became legend. In time, new griots would rise. They would sing the old songs, recount the ancient histories, and perhaps, if they listened closely on a still night, they might hear the faint strains of a kora. For in the end, are we not all both the tellers and the subjects of our own stories? Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. To become a griot was not only to learn, it was to swear, an oath sealed not with ink, but with dust, water, and silence. These were not the laws of kings. These were the laws of the ancestors. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Even if your voice broke, you must carry the names, the lineages, the losses. A griot who twisted history for favor lost the blessing of the spirits. The first oath was to never forget, even if you lost your family, even if you went blind. The second oath was to never lie, not with the drum, not with the tongue. And the third, perhaps the most feared, was to never reveal the inner rituals to outsiders, to speak of what happens behind the drum, to name the herbs used in voice rites, to explain the markings beneath a griot's robes. That was to invite sickness, madness, or worse, silence. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Those who broke the oaths were not punished by men, but strange things happened. A griot who mocked a rival in a sacred space lost his ability to speak. His tongue froze mid-verse for days. Another, who revealed a forbidden drum pattern to a foreign merchant, was found wandering naked in the bush, unable to remember his own name. These were not just stories. They were warnings, and so griots moved carefully. Even at the height of celebration, they knew the line between performance and profanity was thin. Very thin. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars, was the one they refused to share. Let's pause here for a moment. It was the thread that wove past and present, the living and the dead, into a tapestry of shared identity. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The griot's path was not for the faint of heart, nor for those who sought only glory or wealth. Each word, each gesture, each beat of the drum carried the echoes of countless generations. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Each griot had protection. Some wore grease, small leather pouches filled with verses and powdered bone. Others smeared their instruments with sacred oils before performances. Some never drank palm wine on days they were to sing. Here, away from prying eyes, they would share the deepest mysteries of their craft. They were the foundation upon which Griot's art was built, the bedrock of their authority and wisdom. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. It was said that the spirits tested griots more than any other profession, because griots spoke for the dead, and the dead are always listening. Let's pause here for a moment. To carry stories is a gift, but to carry them correctly requires fear, discipline, respect. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. And sometimes, the greatest performance a griot gave, they served as reminders of the power and responsibility that came with the griot's mantle. The weight of tradition hung heavy in the air, as thick as the smoke from the dying embers. In the heart of the village, where the elders gathered and children played, the griot's voice was more than mere entertainment. To stand before the people, to give voice to their hopes and sorrows, to celebrate their triumphs and mourn their losses. This was a privilege beyond measure. Let's pause here for a moment, for it was the discipline they instilled, the reverence they demanded, that allowed the griot to reach such heights of artistry and insight. Young initiates knelt before their elders, swearing the ancient oaths with trembling voices. They became a vessel, a bridge between worlds, a living embodiment of all that had come before. But with great power came great responsibility. It was a calling that demanded sacrifice, a willingness to surrender one's own desires for the sake of preserving something greater, to see beyond the surface of things, to the deeper truths that lay hidden beneath. It was about shaping the future, for in the stories and songs of the griots lay the wisdom that would guide generations yet unborn to touch the divine, to speak with the voice of ages, to weave magic with nothing more than words and music. The oaths were not just words spoken in haste, but solemn vows etched into the very soul. To break them was to shatter not just oneself, but the trust of an entire people. Let's pause here for a moment. In the depths of night, when the village slept and only the crickets sang, the griots would gather in secret places, rhythms passed down from the time of the first ancestors, melodies that could summon rain or soothe troubled spirits, words of power that could heal the sick or curse the wicked. These were the treasures they guarded, the knowledge that set them apart. To reveal these secrets to the uninitiate was to invite chaos into the world, to upset the delicate balance between the seen and unseen realms. Let's pause here for a moment. The consequences of such transgressions were swift and severe, not by the hand of man, but by the will of force far beyond mortal understanding. A griot who boasted of forbidden knowledge to impress a chief found his memory wiped clean, unable to recall even the simplest of songs. Another, tempted by gold to teach outsiders sacred rhythms, woke to find his hands twisted and gnarled, no longer able to coax music from his beloved Cora. These tales spread like wildfire, whispered around cooking fires and in the shade of baobab trees. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. But for all the fear and caution, there was also great joy in the griot's calling. In those moments, when the words flowed like honey and the music pulsed with the heartbeat of the earth itself, the griot became more than just a person. It was in these moments that the true power of the oaths was revealed. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. And so, generation after generation, the tradition continued. They learned to listen not just with their ears, but with their hearts and souls. They practiced until their fingers bled, their throats grew hoarse, pushing themselves to the very limits of their endurance. For they knew that one day it would be their turn to stand as keepers of memory, guardians of tradition, voices of their people. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. In the end, it was not just about preserving the past. The oaths were not chains that bound them, but wings that allowed them to soar. And so, as the fire dies down and the night grows old, we remember, we honor, we listen, for in the griot's voice, we hear the echoes of eternity. There were times when a griot spoke, but it was not them who spoke. The eyes rolled back, the voice dropped, the rhythm of the drum changed, and suddenly the ancestors arrived. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. These were the trance states, not taught in words, not scheduled like songs. They came when summoned, or when the spirits chose. In tradition, it was said that some griots were born with heavy heads, not in mind, but in spirit. They carried too many voices, and when the pressure grew to great ... the body opened, and the ancestors entered. Some griot spoke in forgotten dialects, others wept for people long dead. Some sung verses that had never been taught, full of names no one had heard before. Elders would nod solemnly. "That is not him speaking," they'd whisper. "That's his grandfather's grandfather." Let's pause here for a moment. They were sacred. Proof that griots were not just historians. Their voice hoarse, their feet blistered, their mind emptied. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. After the trance came silence. The griot would sleep for days, and when they awoke, they would not always remember what they said. These moments were never performed for tourists, never spoken of in casual company. They were the keepers of history, the weavers of tales, the bridges between past and present. They were mediums. It is why griots did not always fear death, because they spoke to it, walked alongside it, borrowed its voice. For some, the gift ran deeper, coursing through their veins like ancient rivers. And when their own time came, it was believed they'd simply step out of the body and join the choir of ancestors whispering through the drum. A time when the veil between worlds was thin and the voices of the ancestors echoed through the living. The griot steps forward, adorned in robes that shimmer in the fading light. Let's pause here for a moment. The air is thick with anticipation, for tonight is no ordinary night. To speak beyond the Valto, remember what no one else dares to recalto. Become a mouth for the unseen, their body sways, as if caught in an unseen wind. The ... was the griot's deepest gift. The night air grows still, and we find ourselves transported to a time long past. In the heart of West Africa, where the savannah meets the forest, there lived a people who understood the power of words. The present and past blur, becoming one fluid stream of memory and prophecy. These were but there was more to their craft than mere storytelling. They were the ones who could part the mists of time, who could reach across the divide and grasp the hands of those long gone. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Picture a village at dusk, the sky painted in hues of orange and purple. Exhausted, drained, their body a vessel emptied of its precious contents. The drums begin, a slow, steady heartbeat, and when they finally awoke, their eyes held a new depth, as if they had gazed into the very heart of creation. They reveal secrets buried beneath the dust of ages, truths that make elders nod in solemn recognition. They were a bridge between worlds, a living conduit for the wisdom of ages. At first, their words are familiar, tales of kings and battles, of triumphs and sorrows. But then a change comes over them. The griot's body moved as if possessed, feet stamping intricate patterns into the earth, hands weaving stories in the air. They created a sacred space, a moment out of time where the veil could be safely parted. Their eyes held a certain gleam. Their laughter carried echoes of voices long silenced. The rhythm shifts, becoming urgent, insistent. The griot's eyes grow distant, unfocused. They were watched carefully, nurtured, prepared for the day when the flood of ancestral memory would break through. And then it happens. They became a chorus of voices, a living archive of all that had come before. Through their eyes, the community glimpsed the very fabric of their shared history. The voice that emerges is not their own. It is deeper, older, filled with the weight of centuries. The ancestors have arrived. Others embraced it fully, willingly offering themselves as a bridge between worlds. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. Many griots spoke of feeling hollowed out after a trance, as if pieces of themselves had been scattered to the winds. They were the keepers of memory, the guardians of truths, too vital to be lost to time. Other times, it was summoned through careful ritual, through offerings and prayers, whispered to the wind. In these moments, time loses all meaning. The griot speaks of events long forgotten, of names erased from living memory. For those watching, it is a glimpse into the other world, a reminder that death is not an end, but a transition. The trance could last for hours, sometimes even days. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. And all the while, the drums never ceased. They were the anchor, the lifeline tethering the griot to this world, even as they walked in the realm of spirits. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. To the countless generations that have walked this path before us, to show us that the past is never truly gone, that it lives and breathes within us. When at last the ancestors retreated, when the final echoes of their voices faded, the Griot would collapse. 4 days they would sleep, lost in dreams that no living soul could comprehend. These experiences were not spoken of lightly. They were sacred, revered, understood only by those who had witnessed their power firsthand. For in these moments, the Griot became more than a storyteller. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. It was said that those with the gift of trance were marked from birth. They were born with heavy heads, not burdened by thought, but by the weight of countless souls seeking expression. As children, they might speak in tongues no one recognized, or sing melodies that brought tears to the eyes of elders. And when that day came, when the pressure of those myriad voices became too great to contain, the community gathered. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The trance state was not something that could be forced or scheduled. It came when it willed, when the spirits deemed the time right. Sometimes it arrived in the midst of a normal performance, catching even the Griot by surprise, but always it was a reminder of the Griot's true purpose, to be a vessel for something greater than themselves. In these moments of possession, the Griot ceased to be an individual. Through their lips, long-dead kings issued proclamations. Through their hands, forgotten dancers were reborn. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. It was not an easy gift to bear. The toll on body and mind was immense. Some feared the power, resisted its call, but all understood the profound responsibility that came with such a gift. And so they persevered, honing their craft, strengthening their spirits to withstand the onslaught of ancestral voices, for they knew that in those moments of trance, in those fleeting glimpses beyond the veil, lay the very essence of their people's identity. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. As the night deepens, as the fire burns low, we are left to ponder the mysteries of the Griot's gift. In a world that often seems disconnected from its past, where the voices of ancestors grow faint, perhaps we can learn from their example. Perhaps we too can find ways to listen to the whispers of those who came before, to honor the wisdom carried in our very bones. For in the end, are we not all keepers of stories? Are we not all vessels for something greater than ourselves? Let's pause here for a moment. The Griot's deepest gift was not just to speak beyond the veil, but to remind us that the veil exists at all. And as the last embers of our fire fade, as the stars wheel overhead in their ancient dance, we are left with a profound sense of connection to the earth beneath our feet, to the air that fills our lungs, and to the stories that bind us all together across time and space in an unbroken chain of memory and hope. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. In the grand halls of ancient civilizations, where warriors boasted of their conquests and ministers plotted their schemes, there was one voice that commanded respect above all others: the storyteller, not because he wielded power, but because he held the key to history, how empires rose and fell, how heroes were made and unmade. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The storyteller was never far from the center of power, at the ruler's side, or just behind the royal throne. Not relegated to the back with the guards, not mixed among the priests, but positioned where wisdom could whisper directly into the ear of authority. He was a living chronicle. He knew the lineage of every noble in attendance, and if a single falsehood was uttered, he could unravel it with a well-chosen tale. He was more than a mere entertainer. It was said that no leader truly ascended to power until a storyteller had spoken their name for all to hear. The lands that nurtured their people, the battles that paved their way to the throne, and the ancient oaths still binding their bloodline, not just the name given at birth, but the names of their ancestors. Let's pause here for a moment, only to find himself surrounded by vengeful spirits. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. But the storyteller's role extended beyond praise. He offered guidance, not through loud proclamations, never through disrespect, but with carefully chosen words. If a ruler grew harsh, the storyteller might weave a tale of a hunter who took too much from the forest. If a leader became greedy, the storyteller could recall an ancient king, buried with vast riches, yet mourned by no one as his empire crumbled. The storyteller did not issue commands. He offered perspective, and perspective can cut deeper than any blade. Children gathered close, eyes wide with wonder. Elders nodded, recognizing the wisdom woven into each tale, of love that defied death and courage that moved mountains. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. But beneath every story lay a deeper truth. Lessons on how to live, how to lead, how to face the world's challenges. He had whispered into the ears of countless rulers and outlived them all. The mirror in which people saw their best selves reflected, yet his loyalty was not easily bought. He had witnessed dynasties torn apart by hubris. The triumphs and mistakes of the past became guideposts for the future. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. To outsiders, he might have seemed passive, just a teller of tales, just a keeper of songs. When drought struck, he recalled how ancestors had endured, yet their core truths remained, passed down through centuries. When abundance came, he reminded all of the importance of sharing, not in wealth, but in wisdom. They could turn enemies into friends with a well-chosen fable. But when the storyteller spoke, all listened, for they knew that in those words lay the collected wisdom of ages. They could inspire a demoralized army with tales of past glory. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. But behind the scenes, he was the guardian of truth, reflecting back to power what it often wished to ignore. The storyteller walked a fine line between truth and diplomacy, between inspiration and caution. For while a ruler might choose to forget, a storyteller's memory never fades. For in the storyteller's voice, you might hear echoes of your own story, your own path, your own place in the great tapestry of human experience. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The hopes, the fears, the dreams that no decree could silence. A thread of memory, of meaning, woven through the fabric of time. A wisdom to share, a light to pass on through the darkness of ages. We remember the power of stories, how they shape us, guide us, connect us to something greater than ourselves. In the heart of bustling markets and quiet village squares, the storyteller's voice rang out. Of the cycles of life, the lessons of history, the bonds that tie us to our ancestors and to generations yet unborn. He spoke of great heroes and terrible monsters. Apprenticed to master storytellers, they learned not just tales, but the art of reading hearts, of sensing the mood of a crowd, of knowing when to speak and when to let silence work its magic. Let's pause here for a moment. The storyteller's words bridged generations. What grandfathers had learned, grandchildren now heard. In times of war, his tales bolstered courage. In times of peace, they fostered understanding. His stories were not mere entertainment. They were the glue that held communities together. And so, rulers learned to listen carefully, for, in the storyteller's words, they heard the voice of the people. Let's pause here for a moment. But the storyteller's path was not an easy one. It required a lifetime of learning, of listening, of honing the craft of words. From childhood, they were chosen. Those with keen minds and silver tongues, they traveled far, gathering stories like precious gems. From snow-capped mountains to sun-baked deserts, from bustling ports to remote villages, every journey added to their repertoire. And with each telling, the stories grew. Like living things, they adapted, shifted, took on new meanings for new times. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The storyteller's power lay not in force, but in persuasion. In council chambers, their words carried weight. A ruler might dismiss the advice of generals or the pleas of ministers. Yet with this power came great responsibility. A careless word could spark a war. A misplaced story could topple a dynasty. They were the keepers of culture, the guardians of tradition, but also the sparks of change. Introducing new ideas, wrapped in the comfort of familiar tales. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. As night deepens and the fire burns low, we remember. In a world of fleeting images and instant messages, the storyteller reminds us of deeper truths. So listen closely, and perhaps, in time, you too will have a tale to tell. Let's pause here for a moment, for as long as there are ears to hear and hearts to understand, the storyteller's art will endure. Listen, remember, and let the stories guide you home. In the courts of kings and the compounds of nobles, no marriage was truly sealed until the griot had sung, because beneath every wedding drum ... was politics, and behind every bridal veil ... was legacy. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars, not just for the groom, but for his ancestors. Each one named, each one weighed. He spoke of their victories, their generosity, their enemies. Then came the bride's lineage. Her mother's grace, her father's land, the dignity of her grandmother's clan. The griot opened the day with praise. But listen closely, and the griot said more than what was spoken. He might pause longer before a certain name. They protected history, ensuring no one forgot old debts, old alliances, old dangers. Because marriages between noble families were not just love stories, they were political instruments. And a misstep could ignite war. Each phrase a key to navigating the complex world she was entering, where alliances shifted like sand and every gesture carried meaning. Or drop his voice when mentioning an old blood feud. Not accuse them, just silence. And the silence would ring louder than any drum, because only the griot could hold a mirror to love, and show the politics behind the smile. He spoke of the bride's courage, likening her to great women of the past who had changed the course of history through their wisdom and strength. His words were a bridge between the personal and the political, the emotional and the strategic. He began to weave cautionary tales, stories of marriages that had brought prosperity to kingdoms, and others that had sown the seeds of conflict. These were not mere entertainments, but lessons wrapped in melody, warnings cloaked in praise. In that moment, the weight of unspoken truth hung heavy in the air, felt by all who understood the griot's subtle art. His songs and stories shaped the perceptions of the entire court and, by extension, the kingdom during moments of crisis. His words became a rallying cry, reminding all who listened of their shared history and the strength that came from standing together. A well-timed verse could soothe ruffled feathers between rival factions, or subtly remind an ambitious noble of the dangers of overreaching. His words wove a tapestry of past and present, each thread carefully chosen to reveal or conceal. Now, his songs spoke of legacy and the future. He wove tales of great rulers who had sprung from unions like this one, planting seeds of expectation and hope in the minds of all who listened. The Griot's songs reminded all who listened that every action, every alliance, every child born had the potential to shift the delicate balance of power that held the kingdom together. His words were a constant reminder of the weight of history and the potential of what was yet to come. Through his art, he ensured that no one, from the highest noble to the lowest servant, ever forgot the complex web of relationships and responsibilities that bound them all together. It stood as a living testament to the power of alliances, the importance of lineage, and the delicate dance of politics and personal relationships that defined life in the royal court. His words would echo through the generations, a reminder of the power of marriage to shape history and the enduring role of the Griot in weaving together the threads of politics, love, and legacy into the grand tapestry of life. He reminded him of the weight of his ancestors' legacy and the expectations that now rested upon his shoulders. When disagreements arose, the Griot might sing of legendary couples who had overcome great obstacles together. His words became part of the very fabric of the kingdom, shaping perceptions, guiding decisions, and preserving the delicate balance of power in times of peace. His songs celebrated the wisdom of those who maintained harmony. In times of conflict, his voice became a tool of diplomacy, smoothing over disagreements and reminding all parties of their shared interests. If jealousies threatened to disrupt the peace, he would recount tales of the devastating consequences of such emotions in the past. Through his stories, they learned of the great deeds of their ancestors, the alliances that had shaped their kingdom, and the responsibilities that would one day be theirs to bear. The Griot's words were both a blessing and a challenge, urging the young man to live up to the greatness of his lineage. He might add a verse about betrayal, sweetly sung, but pointed. In this way, Griots acted as both diplomat and prophet. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. In the weeks and months that followed, he would be a constant presence, observing the new couple as they navigated the early days of their union. His keen eyes missed nothing. The small gestures of affection, the moments of tension, the way they interacted with their families and the court. So the Griot's voice had to be precise. Beautiful enough to honor... Sharp enough to warn. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. His melodious voice carried tales of heroic deeds and noble lineages, each verse a testament to the intricate social fabric of the community. During the celebration, the Griot would circle the courtyard, singing praises to each guest in order of their rank. The eyes of rivals are sharper than knives. Beauty fades, but lineage, lineage is forever. But if someone had lied about their bloodline, the Griot would skip them, not insult them. Later in the evening, as dancers filled the floor and palm wine flowed, the Griot would whisper verses into the bride's ear. Marry with grace, but carry your mother's wisdom. These whispered words were more than mere advice. They were the distilled wisdom of generations, passed down through the Griot's lineage. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. It was the Griot who blessed the union, not with charms, but with truth. In the soft glow of evening, the Griot's voice would rise and fall, weaving stories of past glories and future hopes. For the groom, the Griot sang of responsibility and honor, As night deepened, the griots' songs took on a different tone. Let's pause here for a moment. The griot's role extended far beyond the wedding day, and always he was ready with a song or a story. But the griot's influence reached beyond the royal couple. In times of celebration, the griot's voice soared, praising the virtues of unity and shared prosperity. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. As seasons passed and the marriage bore fruit, the griot's role evolved once more. For the children born of this marriage, the griot became a living link to their heritage. And always, beneath the surface of his words, ran currents of politics and power. In this way, the griot's voice became the thread that wove together past, present, and future. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. As the years passed, the griot's influence only grew, and always, at the heart of his art, was the marriage he had blessed so long ago. In the end, it was the griot who would sing the final verses of this great love story, not just of two people, but of families united, of kingdoms strengthened, of a legacy secured. The room was never loud. War was never decided in rage, only in whispers and long silences. And in every silence, the griot listened. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The griot's power lay not in physical strength, but in the weight of history he carried within his mind. He did not wear armor, he carried no blade, but his tongue could disarm the bravest general. Because the griot remembered what swords forgot, in the chambers where fates were decided, his presence was a living archive of triumphs and tragedies past. His role was not to command armies or draw battle plans. Instead, he brought something far more valuable: perspective. Before the drums of war beat, before the spears were polished, before the war horses were fed, the griot was summoned. Not to give orders, but to ask a single question. He remembered how many died, what crops were lost, which allies betrayed them. His words painted vivid pictures of past conflicts, their causes and their consequences. Have we done this before? Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. The griot tales could inspire mercy or fuel vengeance, depending on how they resonated with those who listened. Who reminded kings not just how they won, but what it cost. The chaos of battle was transformed into narrative, giving meaning to the seemingly senseless violence of war. His words ensured that victories were not celebrated blindly, and that the true price of conflict was never forgotten. The griot remembered the last war against that same rival clan, and one day, when the kings were dust, his voice would still carry the story of that blade. The griot's words could cut deeper than any blade, revealing truths that generals and kings might prefer to forget. He was the keeper of uncomfortable truths, the voice that dared to speak when others fell silent. Long after the warriors had fallen and empires had crumbled, the griot's words would echo through time, preserving the essence of what had transpired. In doing so, he wove a tapestry of interconnected histories, reminding those present that even their enemies were not without honor or complexity. He painted pictures of sepia-toned conflicts, his words overlaying the memories of ancient defeats and hard-won victories. Behind him, the griot would stand, whispering words of caution or encouragement. The monarch's face might darken with the weight of responsibility, then harden with resolve as he absorbed the lessons of the past. Through his narration, those present could almost hear the clash of steel and the cries of the fallen echoing across time. He was not just a storyteller, but a counselor, a conscience, and a living connection to the wisdom of the ancestors. He recited the bloodline of the enemy general, and how his grandfather once spared a prince, as he walked among fallen shields, humming softly to himself. Soldiers knew that their actions would not be forgotten. The Griot knelt beside dying warriors, whispering words of comfort or collecting their final messages for loved ones. This solemn task was more than mere record-keeping. It was an act of remembrance, ensuring that each life lost in conflict would be honored and remembered. In doing so, he transformed individual tragedies into a collective memory, a shared history that would shape the identity of his people for generations to come. His words could inspire peace or ignite conflict depending on how they were received. He held the power to shape perceptions, to influence decisions, and to ensure that the lessons of the past were not forgotten. In a world where conflicts are often reduced to statistics and strategic objectives, the griot's voice serves as a crucial reminder of the human cost of war. The griot stories served as a bridge between past and present, helping leaders and warriors alike to understand their place in the grand tapestry of history. In times of peace, he was a keeper of genealogies, a preserver of cultural traditions, and a teacher of moral values. His stories entertained, but they also educated, passing down the collective wisdom of the people from one generation to the next. He crafted verses that honored the fallen, songs that celebrated acts of bravery, and tales that warned of the futility of endless bloodshed. His words transformed raw grief into something meaningful, helping communities heal and move forward. Sometimes, that memory stopped a war. Other times, it sharpened it. As nobles leaned over maps, plotting strategies and alliances, the Griot sat quietly in the corner, sharpening his red pen, his most potent weapon. Through his words, senseless bloodshed became cautionary tales, acts of bravery became legends, and the names of the fallen became immortal. Their presence on the battlefield carried a profound message. What happens today will be remembered. In this way, he ensured that the triumphs and tragedies of the past would continue to shape the future, guiding new generations as they faced their own challenges and made their own difficult decisions. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. We listen, we remember, and we carry these stories forward. For in doing so, we honor the griots of old and keep alive the wisdom they sought to preserve. In some empires, griots rode alongside cavalry, not to fight, but to bear witness. Knowing that their deeds would be immortalized in song and story could push soldiers to acts of great courage or give them pause before committing atrocities. He breathed life into long-dead heroes and villains, making their triumphs and failures feel immediate and relevant. His stories served as both warning and inspiration, reminding those in power of the cyclical nature of conflict. And memory can make a warrior hesitate. It can also make him brave. After the battle, it was the Griot who buried names into verse, who carried the fallen back through song. Because without the Griot, war becomes just noise. But with him, it becomes history. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. He did not hold the sword, but he remembered where it landed. In the smoky chambers where decisions of war and peace were made, the Griot's presence was a constant reminder of the weight of history. His role was not to fight with steel, but with memory. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. When the Griot spoke of past battles, his voice carried the weight of generations. In recounting these tales, the Griot did more than simply recount facts. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. As dawn broke over the kingdom, we might see a king standing at his balcony, gazing out over his realm. This scene, repeated countless times throughout history, illustrated the unique power of the on the battlefield. the Griot's presence served as a powerful reminder of the consequences of war. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. In the aftermath of conflict, it was the Griot who ensured that the true cost of war was never forgotten. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. In dimly lit archive rooms, we might find the Griot working by candlelight. Carefully recording the names of the dead, the Griot's pen moved slowly, deliberately, as he committed each name to parchment. Though he did not wield a sword, the Griot's impact on history was no less profound. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. As we reflect on the role of the Griot in times of war, we are reminded of the power of memory and storytelling. His presence in councils of war and on battlefields alike ensured that decisions were made with full awareness of their historical context and potential consequences. Let's pause here for a moment. The fire crackles softly, and we rest beneath the stars. In the end, the Griot's greatest power lay in his ability to transform the chaos and violence of war into something meaningful. Long after the echoes of battle had faded and the kingdoms of old had crumbled to dust, it would be the Griot's voice that carried the story forward. And so, as we sit here beneath the stars, listening to the soft crackle of the fire, we to become part of this ancient tradition. You've journeyed far, dear listener, from whispered tales to thunderous epics, from forgotten melodies to timeless rhythms. From the depths of history to the edge of tomorrow. We began with a simple question. What makes a story more than just words? Now you understand. Let's pause here for a moment. The embers glow softly, and we bask in the starlight. A storyteller is not merely a weaver of tales, and speak of them as gently as moonlight on water. Not just a painter of worlds, they are the guardians of time, the keepers of truth, the whisper that echoes through generations, the voice that lingers in silence. They remember names erased by time. They carry the weight of untold sorrows. They dance with shadows. Some rarely uttered a word, but when they did, even the mountains leaned in to listen. Some storytellers were gifted with voices smooth as silk. Others rumbled like distant storms. Let's pause here for a moment. The embers glow softly, and we bask in the starlight. And though the storyteller may age, though their hands may tremble, though their sight may dim, their stories endure. You've stood at the precipice of countless worlds, and watched them unfold like petals in the dawn. For tales, when cherished and shared, become a magic all their own. Tonight, you've listened. You've remembered alongside them. From bustling marketplaces to hushed libraries, From laughter to tears, From the tangible present to the misty realms of what might have been. Now, it's time to reflect. Let the whispers of ancient tales lull you into dreams. The pulse beneath the skin of culture, and translate its whispers into melodies that stir the soul. Some spoke rarely, but when they did, reality itself seemed to bend and listen. Let the fire fade to ash, let the constellations wheel overhead, and may your rest be as profound as the storyteller's final word. Still echoing somewhere, beyond the veil of stars, remains eternal. You've stood at the crossroads of countless lives, and watched as they intertwined like roots beneath the earth. The night is still, save for the gentle rustle of leaves. Let's pause here for a final time. The embers glow softly, and we bask in the starlight. You've walked alongside the keepers of memory. Dear friend, we sought to understand, why do stories hold such power? Now the answer resonates within you. The night is still, save for the gentle rustle of leaves. Let's linger here a moment, for the next voice to take up the thread. The tales you've heard, the emotions you've felt, they live on through you. Whisper these tales to the wind, to your loved ones, to strangers in need of hope. For in doing so, you become a link in an unbroken chain stretching back to the very dawn of human consciousness. Every retelling, every moment of reflection keeps the flame of these stories burning bright. In the vast tapestry of human experience, a true storyteller transcends mere entertainment. They are the bridge between worlds, the weavers of collective dreams, the architects of shared imagination. They preserve the essence of those long gone. They shoulder the burdens of unspoken truths. They commune with the invisible. Some storytellers captivated with voices clear as mountain streams, others rumbled like approaching storms. Let's linger here a moment. The night is still, save for the gentle rustle of leaves. Though time may weather the storyteller, though their steps may falter, though memory may fray at the edges, the essence of their tales, because stories, when nurtured with care, become the very fabric of who we are. This night, you've been more than a passive listener. You've become a keeper of tales yourself. Now, as our journey concludes, it's time to carry these stories forward. Let the shadows deepen. Let the world grow quiet. Let the whispers of 1,000 generations sing you to sleep. And may your dreams be as vivid as the storyteller's most vibrant tale, still unfolding. Somewhere, ... Let's linger here for one last breath. As we part ways, remember this: you are now part of the story. We began by questioning the power of narrative. Now you carry that power within you. So go forth, dear listener. Share what you've learned. And though our time together draws to a close, know that the story never truly ends. It simply waits, patient as the stars. Until we meet again, may your path be lit by the glow of 1,000 tales, and may you always find comfort in the eternal dance of words.